Happy Tuesday. I can't think of anything better to do than do some calculations with decimals. What do you think? I'm just kidding. Anyway, here we go. Let's take a look. So I rewrote my problem. My first problem obviously is 5 and 2/10 divided by 4. I rewrote it because remember this first part, and notice how I said that. 5 and 2/10 divided by 4. So I'm taking my first number, and that's what goes under the bar, and then I'm splitting it into groups of 4. Okay. So my very first thing that I should do, remember we talked about this yesterday, was to make our estimate, right? So if I look at 5 and 2/10, remember this 2 is less than 5. So I'm going to stay at 5. And I'm dividing that by 4. Okay, so I know if I have 5 things and I'm splitting it into a group of 4, I'm not going to have a lot, right? So I'm going to have 1. That's going to give me an idea to go like 1. And I have a little bit left over, right? So I know if I am taking a look, the other thing I can do is talk about 4. Remember, I'm going to write this under. 4 times what number is going to give me 5? Well, 4 times 1 gives me 4, right? And then I have to have a little bit more. If I do a little bit more than that, so I know that I'm going to have a good amount better. I'm going to call that maybe like 1, and then I'm going to have at least a quarter more. So 1.25 at least more is kind of what I'm going to say. And I know this one's a little bit trickier because of the fact that we only have a little bit that we've been doing, right? Talking about our decimals, and they're harder. Okay. So on this one, this is one of those things that we talked about, decimal movement. I always look at this number outside the bar to know, am I moving any decimals? Notice there's no decimals here. So that means this decimal here just kind of comes up on top. I bring that up. And now I treat that the same way. It's like I pretend there's no decimal. So I follow my steps. The divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. So I'm taking a look, remember division, that's that oddball we talked about, starts on the left. So if I have 5 things, I'm looking to make groups of 4. Well, if you put up 5 fingers, you know you can make one group of 4. So now I'm going to multiply. 4 times 1 is 4. So then I subtract. 5 minus 4 gives me 1. And then I'm going to bring down. Remember, this is our arrow. So I have 12. Okay, now I have my 12 items, and I'm making groups of 4. Well, this is our facts again. If I know that I'm looking, so basically I'm going to write over here. So I have 12 divided by 4 equals what number? We're going to turn that around the other way to remember we talk about using the other operation. Remember we called it the inverse. And I'm going to use what I know, my 4 times, and I'm going to use this line. And remember we talked about division, we go back to here. I'm using this one because it's a smaller number, so it's a little more manageable. Well, remember when I look at my multiplication chart and I look down my 4s, right? I'm going to take a look and I know that I see I want 3 groups to equal 12. Do you remember when we used our multiplication chart in class, we were looking here. This is the column or the row. I'm going to look down and I'm looking to get to 12 or closest to 12. Well, 12 is actually a multiple, and that is 3. So I'm filling that in all these places. So 4 times 3 is 12. And I go back to here. Now I'm at subtract, right? So 12 minus 12 is 0. Well, I have nothing left down here, so I know I had the right amount of groups. So here's my final answer. 1 3/10, which is really close to our estimate. How'd you do? Okay, so now we're going to look at our multiplication. So remember, multiplication can use our commutative. So we can flip-flop, for my fancy word, right? The order. I'm going to try to put the number that has the smallest amount of digits, which in this case is my 2, as my bottom number. The reason I'm doing that is because however many digits I have here, remember we talked about in class, is how many add-ins, those things that I have to add together here. And whenever I have a smaller number here, I don't have so many things that I'm trying to do the multiplication. So I rewrote it right here. And let's go back and do our estimate. So this is going to be like 2 times. And when I have my 8 and 38 hundredths, I know I'm looking here, right? The 38 is going to be less than 50, or I look here, this 3. So I'm going to stay with my 8. And 2 times 8, you got it, is 16. So my final answer should be close to 16. Remember when we talked about with division and multiplication, it may or may not be as close as you think for that, because remember, we are making groups. Here I'm making 2 groups of like $8.38. So it's a little bit different. And remember, on this one, I rounded kind of down, we want to call it, right? So I did not account for these 2 groups of 38 cents. So my answer is going to be more than the 16. But remember, that's something we were talking about. Okay, so on here, so I'm going to start on the right. And I have 2 times 8 is 16. I carry my 1. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7. And 2 times 8 is 16. Now I worry about the decimals. Okay, so I go back and I have 2 decimal places right here. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to start behind, and I'm going to move over, and I'm going to put it right there. So I get 16 and 76 hundredths. Notice we talked about that. Here's my 16. That's like my estimate. Here's what happened, because when I did my estimate, I did not account for my 38 cents, the 2 groups of it, and that's why I have it more. So that's why I have more than what I estimated, but notice it's very close. How'd you do on that one? Okay, so now let's talk about adding decimals, right? Yesterday we subtracted, today we're going to add. So remember, anytime we talk about adding or subtracting decimals, we have to line up the decimal. Notice I don't see a decimal here, but anytime I don't see it, remember it's after, it's behind it, right? So we just have to remember that. And if it's easier for you, just like we talked about in class, make that right there, okay? So when I do this here, I'm going to line it up. I'm going to put that in here. So here's my decimals. Notice they're in a line, and I'm going to bring that down for my final answer because I want them straight in a line, okay? If I have nothing there and I have a digit in the other part, I need to put a 0 to hold the place. Remember, I can't just pretend like there's nothing there. Okay, now let's go back and make our estimate. So if I have 48, I don't know about you, but I'm going to pretend like that's 50 because it's easier for me to work with. Plus, and 58 is a lot closer to 60, right? I'm looking at my tens. I have 8 here. That's going to make this go up. So that'd be closer to 50. And this one here, I have 8. This is going to make this go up. So it makes it 60. Well, I know that 5 plus 6 is 11. And then I have 1 0 after. So this should be around 110. That's my estimate. Remember? Now, when we add and subtract, if we made a good estimate, we should be a lot closer to our estimate on this because these are more exact. Okay. All right, so let's get to adding. Do not, right? So where we look here, we're always going to the right. We start on the right. Remember, division is the only one that starts on the left. That's that weirdo. Okay, so I'm going to go here. So 0 plus 1 is 1. 8 plus 8 is 16. Well, I'm going to put my 1s down, and then I have to regroup. I carry my 1 from making it 16. I don't just write 16 down here. That'd be kind of weird, right? So then I'm going to start up here. 1 plus 4 is 5, plus another 5 is 10. And I get 106.1. Well, that kind of makes sense, right? Because 110 is higher, but let's take a look. When I did this, I rounded up 2 to get to 50. So I estimated more. And when here I was 58.1, I rounded up again, right? So at least this is, notice because I have my 0.1, that'd be like 1.9. Well, this is like another 2. So I had 2 extra here and 2 extra here. That'd be like 4. So notice I have that. And that's why my answer is this. So this will be correct. There's my answer. Okay. How did you do today? I'd love to hear from you. Thanks.